Well, now we're going to dive into the power of positive marketing. And to do that, we have Bill Gutrich. He's the Director of Global Food Industry Engagement at Elanco Animal Health, and he's worked in marketing for some of the world's most recognizable brands, including COCA-COLA, McDonald's, and Samsung. But he recently joined the animal agriculture world and has found himself surprised and even shocked at some of the ways that animal proteins have been and are still being marketed. So in this session, Bill will share a newcomer's perspective on marketing in the animal protein industry today. With that, let's welcome him to the stage.
Good afternoon. It's good to be here, and I was already kind of introduced, and yeah, this is my first year in animal agriculture, though I didn't just get out of college. But anyway, as it was said, I worked for the Coca-Cola company for 17 years and built my career in consumer packaged goods marketing. I also spent a little time, the last 8 years of that, with McDonald's, actually working with global brand McDonald's, and then I also worked with Samsung, marketing, it was crazy business, marketing smartphones. But anyway, Animal Ag asked me, they were kind enough to let me talk about marketing and positive marketing, because coming into this industry anew, I'm very surprised at the marketing that I see and how animal proteins are marketed. And so if you allow me, I'll talk about that today, because I think we need positive marketing of meats in this industry, and we should be in a positive posture, not constantly defending. So I hope this talk will spark a couple thoughts for you. Let me make sure. So why would somebody in the Animal Health Solutions Company, or really any of us here, care about animal protein marketing? Well, the simple answer is every one of our companies, and for that matter, everything that's in our paychecks, starts out in the hands of a consumer, and that is handed by that consumer across a counter in a restaurant or in a grocery store to buy meat. So how these products, which I'll call brand chicken, brand turkey, brand beef, brand pork, brand eggs, brand milk, and brand cheese, are marketed impacts all of us, as we are all members of a very connected food chain that stretches from farm to fork. So let me start out, if I can, by first sharing some insights from Simon Sinek. Perhaps you've heard of him. His thoughts on good marketing are simple and pure genius. If you have not seen his numerous TED Talks or YouTube videos, they're worth a watch. He captures in a few minutes the very essence of great marketing. I'd like to frame our discussion today around marketing and animal proteins on his insights. Simon Sinek says that great brands, those that command great loyalty and a premium price for their otherwise commodity product in every single industry, think, act, and market in exactly the same and right way. And it's the exact opposite of how most all other brands are marketed. Simon frames his simple concept of this great marketing with this little bullseye diagram. So it has why at the center of it, and how in the second ring, and then what on the outside. And Simon says that most brand marketing, which is always ineffective, talks about what, because that's clear and easier. Every brand knows what they make, for that matter. We grow chickens and we sell fresh chicken. Some brands then try to talk about a how, to try and differentiate their what. So our chicken is free range, our chicken has no hormones, our chicken is raised without antibiotics by us. But Simon says that doesn't really work either. He says that great brands, those that are most endeared by consumers, have great loyalty and gain a premium for their otherwise commodity product, do so by inspiring consumers with their brand why. Expressing that is much tougher, but it is only what truly works. It's the brand's beliefs, the brand's greater purpose or cause, the brand's reason for existing. The feeling of the brand that inspires like-minded consumers to emotionally connect to what they believe and to their emotional why that they have in seeking the product. Great marketing appeals to that why, the emotion, not the what, not the how. So maybe in chicken it would be something like this. We get up every morning as the sun is rising on the plains to thoughtfully employ our Earth's precious resources as sustainably as we can, and to leverage our years of farming heritage to raise and care for our chickens. We do this to provide your family and ours the very best and most nutritious protein that nature can offer. That sounds a lot better. That's talking to the why, and it's leveraging the deep equity that consumers feel about farmers. Simon uses Apple as his example, maybe the world's best marketed brand. And he says that if Apple was like everybody else, they'd say, we are Apple. We make computers. They are beautifully designed and easy to own and carry and have the best user interface. Want to buy one? Instead, though, Simon shares, Apple communicates like this, starting with why. In everything we do, they say, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. Because we believe these things, everything we make is beautifully designed, easy to own and carry, and has the best user interface. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? That's much different, isn't it? As Simon says, it feels different because starting with why is about feeling, because loyalty is a feeling and it's a human feeling. So great marketing talks about the consumer, connecting to that emotional why, connecting to the rewards the consumer is seeking in their purchasing moment of truth. Simon says so rightly that people they don't buy what you do, they're going to buy why you do it. Put another way, they will not get emotionally connected to your product or your production methods. They will only get emotionally connected and loyal to your brand story, your purpose, your cause. Trust. Trust is the essence of all of this. We need to connect emotionally to build brand trust. Value. We need to always remember, value is not determined by the marketer. It is determined by the consumer. So to say, you can't try to assign to the consumer a how as the why that you or some activist thinks they should care about. You must appeal to what they care about, their why. And Simon highlights Henry Ford's great quote. If he was focused on what, he'd have given them faster horses. But his new product was all about the why. I want to be able to travel wherever I want, beyond where I could have imagined before, and do so freely and in style and comfort. Ford delivered the dream, he delivered the why, and the rest is history. So, the real struggle in marketing is putting emotion into words and connecting to that why. And from my years of being around great marketers, it all boils down to this. First, understand the consumer and start with why. Determine the most important attributes or emotional rewards that the consumer is seeking and that your product can deliver. Rank those desired attributes, and then own the highest attribute you can. Make that your brand. Make it your attribute. And market your brand to uniquely and emotionally connect to that attribute. If your competitor already owns number one, then own number two. Then market number two hard to maybe make it more important than number one. So that simply says that make your brand synonymous with a desired emotion. That's the way you earn a premium, win and retain loyalty, and grow continually. So are you not sure that a brand can do that? Own an emotion, a feeling? I offer you this. So I worked for Coca-Cola, and we competed with the Pepsi-Cola company, and well, we called them the Mountain Dew company because their best brand by far was Mountain Dew. Now look at this brand. What does that name mean? Well, it sounds like something from the Tennessee Hills, and it originally was. That's how it was marketed. But today, brand Mountain Dew literally owns an emotional feeling, and the word is energy. Mountain Dew is literally skateboarded off a cliff, and they ride that desired consumer feeling for energy to be a dominant and strong brand with great loyalty. So, that's a tall sandwich of a lot of marketing theory. Now let me talk about some examples. My friend Anne-Marie this morning showed her consumer panel 2 commercials which I provided to her. Let's talk about those. So what are you thinking about when you buy cheese in the supermarket? For me, I'm thinking fresh, good, protein, natural, maybe a rich taste profile, attractively packaged, fair price, in a shape and form I need, but maybe emotionally I'm thinking, will it present well? Will it make me look good to my family and friends at the graduation party we're having? Is it classy, worldly, exotic? I like to feel classy, worldly, and exotic. These are the sort of emotional rewards I'm looking to have satisfied when I shop for cheese. After watching the Sargento'S spot, it emotionally connects to me. Sargento understands my want to impress and celebrate with my family and friends and have genuine quality, exotic, delicious, real cheese. I come away liking Sargento. I'm inspired to be a real cheese person too. I think the panelist who said she wanted a grilled cheese sandwich, she caught on to that. Then there's the Kraft spot, with the voice of God over the top telling me about hormones. Yes, but of course, clearly my first emotional thought when I'm buying cheese in the market is, how the heck am I going to knock the testosterone down at home? Not exactly. That's not why I buy cheese. Kraft, it seems, is going to tell me what should be important to me. no hormones, a how, regardless of what I may have as my needs. This is a huge mistake in my view. I believe that as Simon Sinek contends, it will not get us loyalty or a premium for that product. I think instead it only works to cause undue long-term suspicion of cheese. You see, there really are two brands in this Kraft spot that are being marketed here. Brand cheese as a food and brand Kraft as a producer of that food. What this is doing is undermining consumer trust in the very product, cheese, that it's intended to market. It is sacrificing, actually, brand cheese in hopes to gain a little benefit for brand Kraft. But put another way, and this is what shocks me as a marketer, this is like taking the criticism of activist groups against our industry due to those activist groups claiming it's what consumers actually want, though that is never the case, making it their brand story and then promoting the criticism, which has absolutely nothing to do with the consumer's concept of why. I'd love to see the research that says that this is going to drive loyalty for Kraft or that they're going to get a sales uptick. It wouldn't by anything I've ever known. It seems only a desperate attempt at a short-term game. And as a newcomer to this industry, I don't understand this type of marketing for an iconic brand like Kraft or any other brand. Another example of this type of marketing mistake, brought this up earlier, Bud Light. So Bud Light, before the Super Bowl, they had a wonderful thing going with their King and Dilly Dilly. They had us really well connected. People were naming their softball teams Dilly Dilly. Okay? And I particularly loved the spot where the King summons the wizard. He says, "Hey, wizard, give us some more Bud Light." And the wizard says, "But your highness, I can give you infinite wisdom. I can give you eternal life. I could give you all the gold in the world." He says, no, just some more Bud Light. And we all laugh, and that's funny. And why? Because that emotionally connects with us. It implies that there really is nothing better than having a few beers or Bud Lights with your buddies. It might even be better than eternal life. But the Super Bowl comes along, and then marketing stupidity struck. They decide to elevate corn syrup, of all things, as a how of their brewing process and tell consumers, well, this should be your why. What? Please tell me. What Joe Sixpack ever stood in front of the cooler and looked around and said, geez, I wonder which one of these uses corn syrup in their processing? They took that wonderful King, in my view, and put a lance right through him. In doing this, as we know, Bud Light also ticked off all the farmers and corn growers and had to issue apologies. Worse yet, Miller Coors ran a full-page ad in the New York Times pointing out that corn syrup is only used in their fermentation and does not actually end up in the beer, and also suggesting that Bud Light was trying to leverage consumer fears about high fructose corn syrup by bringing up corn syrup. All of this had Bud Light looking deceitful and dishonest in the news stories, and it's now creating new consumer concerns about how beer is brewed. Funny enough, it was in the news that the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer of Bud Light, just left. Big surprise. And he went to work for Kraft. Then this comes out a few days ago. Light beer sales overall were down in 2008 due in part to the exodus of consumers from beer to wine and spirits. Now we learn that the beer industry collectively realized this and understood their responsibility to market brand beer. Very good. As well as their particular brands. They were planning a multi-million-dollar industry campaign, but that all ended when Bud Light pulled their little corn syrup stunt. More recently, this article. Pretty cool. Miller Coors is suing Bud for false advertising. Now, I ask you, could this happen in fresh chicken or other animal proteins? With all of our claims, our law intends to prevent misleading consumers, and we all know that many of the claims on packaged meat are very misleading and in some cases wholly factually untrue. These types of trick labels are actually completely illegal in the EU. So I'd suggest claim-based marketing has legal risk. But again, by far, I wouldn't do it because it's just bad consumer marketing. Here's something smarter and a little bit refreshing. Domino's gets their responsibility to manage, to market both brand Domino's and brand pizza. They're doing a thing where if you snap a picture of anybody's pizza and send it to them, well, they'll give you points off on your next Domino's pizza. Pretty clever. By the way, Domino's is doing great. They're on fire, largely because they figured out that today one of the most important attributes of the pizza experience to consumers is speed and ease of ordering. They are literally killing it in their business with their mobile ordering app, if you've used it, which is nourishing consumers' emotional desire for quick and easy, better than anyone else. Well, my career started with Coke, so what about them? I think it's fair to say that they have, for the most part, done it right. It's never how Coca-Cola is made. That's a secret anyway, isn't it? It's how it makes you feel. They connect brand Coke to some of the most desired and cherished moments and feelings, like top left, celebrating our diversity and community as human beings with the 1971 iconic hilltop spot, "I'd like to buy the world a Coke." Then center, Mean Joe Green, we've all seen this one. Coke here connecting to our appreciation for the amazing innocent sweetness of a child, even to a grouchy old football player. Coke has worked so very hard to connect over and over to the warmth that we all feel at Christmas time and celebrating the holidays with our family of friends and with our kids and the kids in all of us with their polar bears and Santa. By the way, Santa as we know him in red suit and white beard was actually drawn 100 years ago by a Coke artist named Hayden Sundblom. Pretty iconic. We never had an image of Santa before that. Below here, bottom corner, 2018, a spot celebrating the unique and emotional bond between a younger and older brother, or an ad from the 40s celebrating the human warmth of great storytelling. Or lastly, you all know now, the essence of expressing friendship in the modern day is to give them a Coke with their name on it. But all of it is emotion, connecting to the consumer's why in a special moment that they reach for refreshment. Coke is just naturally there. But you might say to me, that's Coke, that's easy. They're not slaughtering animals. We are criticized continually. We have to address that. Well, I worked for Coke for 17 years, and they are massively criticized. You are poisoning our children, pouring sugar and acid down their throats, making them obese and rotting their teeth. Harsh criticism, right? Makes you want to run ads and say, we have 800 brands, 650 of them don't even have sugar. We make a lot of bottled water. We provide choice. Well, Coke actually experimented a few years back and ran a few of those ads, and they failed. Sales actually declined, which confirms what we've been saying here, that stuff that should be handled in corporate social responsibility belongs there. Keep your brand story on the consumer's emotional why. So transparency should be accessible to those that want to go look, but it should never be jammed down their throat because it's part of the brand story. So, don't let your critics define your why. Handle criticism in separate strategy, which is corporate PR communications. Keep your brand story on the consumer why. In the Kraft spot calling out no hormones, or the spots we see from some of the leading chicken brands these days saying no antibiotics ever, it is very clear to me that these brands are taking criticism from their business, wrongly assuming it's the voice of all consumers, reacting to it by actually changing their product offering to appease that criticism, and then worst of all, making it part of their brand story, or making it their brand story. Again, this does not work. The strategy is wrong. It's even crazy because the message has nothing to do with the emotional why that the vast majority of consumers want. Instead, it may actually scare them off. The panel, if you noticed this morning, the panelists, when they were asked an unaided question, what do you think about when you buy meat? Not one of them brought one of these things up until the very last lady. And she's part of that 10 or 15% that's all about that. But it was only when we asked 80 questions that they did. Coke and other great brands know that brand story is dictated by the consumer and needs to be about reinforcing the emotional needs the consumer wants satisfied. But as good as they are, big brands even make mistakes, like Bud Light did. Well, for Coke, That happened in 1985. New Coke. Maybe you know the story. Coke took criticism and made it their brand story. Pepsi was the critic, their competitor. They were doing taste tests on street corners across America and saying more consumers in a blind taste test said that Pepsi tastes better than Coke. Well, Pepsi is sweeter and more syrupy, always has been. Coke, more acidic, more bite, less sugar, and by the way, sugar tastes good. So in blind taste tests, yes, it was happening. And Coke blinked. They were so good at connecting for so long to the emotional why for years, yet they lost sight. They thought Pepsi had them, so they blinked, and they changed the formula to be sweeter, and consumers reacted violently. If you're old enough to remember, there were literally riots in the streets. The consumers were saying, hey, that's not why we choose Coke, and you messed with the icon that you've connected to so many special moments for me. They managed to save the brand from the jaws of death by bringing back Coke Classic. And yes, Coke has to taste reasonably good. That's the greens fees, but people choose and drink Coke because of how it makes them feel. Knowing this story and coming into this industry makes me correlated to iconic historic animal protein brands deciding to change their product and make their whole brand story about some claim, and in the process, forgetting why they were loved. Here's a more modern taste test example. McCafe, a couple years ago working with McDonald's. They're doing blind taste tests on the corner, putting 3 cups of coffee in front of people and saying, which one tastes better? It was McDonald's, Dunkin', or Starbucks. Guess what? 75% of consumers said McDonald's has the best tasting coffee. Next day they go back, they put the 3 cups down again. Same consumers. This time they put the labels on. Guess what? 75% of consumers said Starbucks tastes better, okay? So Starbucks sells the most expensive cup of coffee in the world, not because their coffee tastes the best by far. It's reasonably good, but it's because of how Starbucks makes you feel, how they deliver the holistic coffee drinking experience, emotional connection. So Simon Sinek talks about Apple. And is arguably the best marketed brand in the world. Apple inspires loyalty. Look at these ads. You see any product features, hows or whats? No, it's all emotion. When these dancing silhouettes came across with the iPod, it inspired us all. We just wanted to feel like that. Look at the bottom right one with the recent billboard, a 65-year-old woman taking 8 selfies of herself. Or center top, some friends making a cool sunset picture. No big copy, just the emotional experience that Apple owns and connects to our whys and why we love our phones. But Apple is a glamour brand, right? They don't have any critics. Au contraire, my friends. Apple has fierce critics. Just Google 2 words, Apple and labor, and this is what you'll see. Activists relentlessly attack Apple, saying that their phones are made in subhuman labor conditions in sweatshops by underpaid Chinese workers. But could you ever imagine these guys doing a commercial talking about how they're addressing their labor problems in China? Not in a million years. That is not their brand story. They handle it through corporate social responsibility communications, and you can go look and read it, but it's never pushed into their brand story. So, maybe you'll say that Apple is not a commodity, but I think folks I know at Samsung would want to argue that. But how about tires? Like beef or chicken, tires are basically commodities. When consumers are surveyed about tires, the emotional need that they want satisfied most in their purchase, the top attributes are number 1, safety, and number 2, performance. The 2 brands that own those brand positions, and only those 2 brands, can routinely claim a premium for their tires. First one, safety. Michelin, babies in the tires. It's what's riding on your tires. Everything that's important to you. How does that manifest in the consumer? Real simple. When I'm sending my baby daughter off to college, I want her riding on Michelins, and I'm willing to pay a little bit more for that. And then there's Goodyear. They are all over every racing circuit in America and around the world, and they fly blimps over every iconic sports performance we have. They own the word performance. Now, Michelin owns safety, and they can't be moved off of that. Goodyear would waste their money trying to make a safety argument to consumers, so they own performance. And how does that manifest in the consumer? Well, when I finally get that hot Mustang I've always wanted, I'm not putting Bridgestones or Continentals or even Michelins on it. I want Goodyears because that's what Jimmy Johnson has on his race car. So, all the other brands in the tire business have to fight in the commodity mud on price. But these 2 brands have delivered great emotionally connected marketing for years. But do these guys have any criticism? Well, you bet. As a used tire is maybe the single worst thing that can happen to our environment over and over again. They never break down. If they're burned, it's a disaster, and they collect water and harbor mosquitoes. The tire industry is relentlessly attacked by environmental activists, but do you ever see that addressed in Michelin's or Goodyear's ads? No way. Brand story is brand story, CSR is CSR, and transparency belongs with CSR. Handle it right, but keep your brand story on what the consumer cares about in that moment of truth. So here is another example in the dairy industry, and it's a bad example that is closer to home that we should all learn from. For 10 years, starting in about 2004, the dairy industry, fluid milk brands engaged in one-upping each other in marketing with negative claims about not using hormones. This worked only really to undermine consumer trust in milk and actually opened a huge chasm for milk alternatives, almond and soy milk, which is now 10% of the milk case. The sales data here shows 10 years of sharp decline in fluid milk sales. The companies kept saying, hey, buy our milk, it's got no hormones, jamming that how down the throats of consumers and raising suspicion of dairy milk and ignoring the long-standing consumer whys that people drink milk. When consumers were asked, if you look at this chart, when consumers were asked when they were shopping during this time for fluid milk, what were the most important things they said? Freshness, price, taste, fat content. They didn't even bring up hormones when they were walking in the store. And then we did the same kind of survey when they walked out of the store after they'd been slapped in the face with all the hormone labeling. Well, still only 7 to 9% of them even mentioned hormones. So all that talk about hormones was replacing talk that should have been about all the consumer whys that people drink milk, and much was lost there. It's interesting that brand loyalty is still number 2, so it really was a big missed opportunity. Amidst all that time, here was Mintel, a wonderful, objective, and credible marketing research firm, in this article pointing out that the milk sellers really need to be marketing differently to the consumers. Why? And they weren't. With all that said, in the milk business, in a vastly declining milk business, losing ground to soy and almond milk, could a new brand of real dairy milk succeed? One sold at 2 times the price per gallon of any other milk? Well, yes, with good and positive marketing. Maybe you all know this story, but it's Fairlife Milk. Fairlife Milk brand is positive spirited messaging with some cool innovation sprinkled in, connecting to the emotional reasons that consumers love milk. Their ads tease introducing Fairlife Milk, great tasting, oh so good, one-of-a-kind milk. Yet there are some mentioned product features, half the sugar, which in the mind of consumers is decisively bad, and twice the protein, which consumers really connect with and decisively good. And also lactose-free. Pretty surprising there. Fairlife is a great success story of positive marketing. These results here, if you take a look at them, are amazing in the world of launching a new consumer product. They are actually sourcing 70% of their volume from milk alternatives. So they're winning ground back from soy and almond milk. That's pretty incredible. And if you have ever launched a brand and you can get 1 out of every 2 people that try it to buy it again, that's astounding. So it's a really, really great story. When we think about chicken, though, fresh chicken, the thing that chicken consumers really, the brand story that we ought to build a brand around would be protein. Protein is hot, okay? And chicken is a wonderful, nutritious source of protein, 28 grams of protein. Why isn't anybody owning that brand position in the chicken business, I would ask? Try to sell fats or carbohydrates today. It's all about protein, right? Instead, we have, and this is interesting, even with that, why is it even a bigger opportunity? Only 38% of consumers correctly identify chicken as a great source of protein with 28 grams, yet a lot of them also say peanut butter is with 8 grams of protein. The peanut butter guys aren't stupid. They're going to jump on what's hot, and protein is hot. So this next slide shows what damage we've done with the consumer marketing that we've done on chicken. We've got consumers believing that there's hormones in it and believing that broiler chickens are raised in cages. Amazing what we do with labels. So this slide really is telling, though. This is probably the most telling slide of my whole presentation. It's AC Nielsen data, and it shows how consumers actually vote with their dollars in the fresh chicken case. And what it shows is before, two of the major brands last year moved their whole line, took choice away from the consumers, and moved their whole line into claim-based chicken. It shows that 86% of the chicken sold is actually conventional chicken, and only 14% of the consumers are willing to pay an extra dime for something that has a claim on it. Pretty amazing. And this data is more recent. Last year I mentioned the two top brands, which represent 20% of the market. They changed all that. They took choice away from the consumer and put no antibiotics ever on all their chicken. So the claim side moved up to 36% or 36%, or 34% rather. But look at this. The conventional chicken is growing faster, both in dollars and pounds, than the claim-based chicken. And actually, if you look, Little Organics, very small niche, that sells $6 a pound. There's a consumer for that, but it's very small. If I showed you more of these numbers by brand, what you would see is those two big brands that moved over are actually pulling down the numbers in the claim side. Actually, they are down in both pounds and dollars in their sales. So is that working with the consumer? No, it is not. This is very interesting. And it's another reason why we ought to get away from all this claim marketing stuff. I was at a conference and a guy from Google was speaking, and he shared this stat, 2018 over 17, searches for GMOs down 16%, searches for organic, it should say 12%, sorry about that typo. But anyway, what's going on here? Are consumers getting fatigued with all this stuff? Maybe so. Maybe they're not buying into it anymore. And this chart from Nielsen, from a panel study, these numbers may look a little high, but do understand they were asked with aided awareness questions. Okay, if it was unaided, people won't bring up any of this stuff. But the key thing to notice is that from 2016 to 2018, consumers are less concerned about these things in their purchase. So here again, are these claims and all this stuff kind of dying down a little bit in the consumer's mind? Well, I'd build on that a little bit by saying this. This is a chart about generations, right? And I think marketers are very, well, let's say a little drunk on millennials. We talk about millennials all the time. But Gen Z is now bigger. The oldest ones are 23. And millennials are getting older. So what's really going on here? I think, when I think of millennials, I think of them this way. A millennial will pay $6, $7 for a cup of coffee because it's in a fully recycled paper cup, and the beans were sourced responsibly. And there's a little panel on the side that $1 is going to be donated to save the pandas in some other part of the world. That's wonderful. That's your millennial. How does the Gen Z look at that by comparison? Hey, sustainability and sourcing your beans, that's your responsibility, not mine. And I'll donate to the pandas when I want to. I want the coffee for $4. Okay, so that's the difference in those two generations. So there is hope. Millennials are very much into the causes. After all, they are the sons and daughters of the me generation from the late 60s and early 70s. They challenge all authority. But these Gen Zs, they're the kids of the people that grew up in the Reagan years, who were more conformist. And by the way, they were the kids of the people that grew up in the Kennedy years. So we kind of go from conformists to revolutionaries, to conformists, to revolutionaries. So things are changing. And by the way, millennials are getting older too. They're having kids. And, I always think of Winston Churchill's great line, if you don't have if you're not a liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart, and if you're not a conservative when you're older, you don't have a brain. Well, that may apply to conservatives in the sense that as they get older, they get more pragmatic, they're having kids, they're not about the revolution anymore. So all those factors would tell you maybe all this stuff is calming down. But the bottom line, and my takeaway on all of this, is just to say to you this, is when you engage or react to criticism in your marketing, or worse yet, make it your brand story, you actually over-empower that criticism and let it control your destiny. That can damage our credibility and our business. We must stay to the consumer's emotional why and have transparency available for those that want to look and handle it in our corporate social responsibility. But let's connect and market the way we should in animal protein. So I say chicken marketing, because I talked about a lot, needs to change. And all animal protein marketing needs to be positive and shaped by the consumer's why. I hope that was helpful to you. Stirs a couple thoughts in your head, and thank you so much.